in the vast, silent theater of history, before the great empires rose to cast their long shadows across the earth, there was the sun, and there was the soil. Imagine, if you will, a world far younger than the one we inhabit today, a world bathing in the pristine, unfiltered light of the Neolithic era. It is a time of slow transitions, where the nomadic spirit of humanity is beginning to settle, driving roots into the earth just as the plants do, trading the infinite horizon of the hunter for the cyclical certainty of the farmer. Here, in the fertile cradle nestled between the mighty Tigris and the wending Euphrates, the air hangs heavy with the scent of wet clay and drying heat. The land is a patchwork of green reeds and brown mud, a landscape defined by the generosity of the rivers. It is here, long before the first stone of the pyramids was cut from the bedrock of Giza, long before the marble of Athens was polished to a gleam, that a quiet biological revolution was taking place. It did not begin with a roar of conquest or the clash of bronze swords, but with the gentle swaying of a simple flower in the warm Mesopotamian breeze. To the untrained eye, it was merely another splash of color in the verdant tapestry of the riverbanks. It was a delicate organism, standing perhaps a meter tall, crowned with petals as thin as parchment paper. They blushed in shades of crimson, violet, and white, trembling at the slightest disturbance of the wind. For a few fleeting days, these petals offered their beauty to the sun, a fragile display of nature's artistry. But the true power of this plant, the secret that would bind it to humanity for the rest of time, did not reside in the ephemeral beauty of the bloom. It lay in what remained after the beauty had withered. As the petals fell, scattering like confetti upon the dusty ground, they revealed a bulbous, green capsule, the seed pod. It stood atop the stalk like a lonely sentinel, swollen and smooth, crowning the plant with a promise of something hidden. It was here, in this unassuming botanical vessel, that the Sumerians, the people of the black-headed reeds, stumbled upon a mystery that would change the architecture of the human mind. We can imagine the moment of discovery. Perhaps it was accidental, a farmer brushing too hard against the stalk with a flint tool, or a child playing in the fields, scratching the green skin of the pod with a sharp fingernail. From the wound in the plant's flesh, a substance began to ooze. It was a milky, white latex, viscous and sticky, bleeding from the cut like a tear. In the intense heat of the Mesopotamian afternoon, this white milk would not remain liquid for long. As it met the air, it darkened, oxidizing into a gummy brown resin. It was bitter to the taste, a concentrated essence of the earth's dark chemistry. The Sumerians, observers of the natural world and architects of the first cities, did not recoil from this bitterness. They embraced it. They cultivated it. In the cuneiform tablets of Nippur, pressed into wet clay over 4,000 years ago, we find the earliest written record of this relationship. They gave the plant a name that resonates with a haunting simplicity. ****. Translated from the ancient tongue, it means the joy plant. It is a name whispered with reverence across the millennia, a title that hints at both salvation and seduction. For within that brown, bitter resin lay a power that seemed, to the ancient mind, to be nothing less than divine. It was a power that could manipulate the very fabric of human sensation. It could take the screaming agony of a broken bone and reduce it to a distant, dull throb. It could take the racking cough of a dying elder and smooth it into silence. It could take the crying child, fretful with fever, and lull them into a deep, heavy slumber. This was the milk of paradise. This was the first time humanity found a tangible, chemical answer to the problem of suffering in a world without aspirin, without anesthesia, without the sterile comforts of modern medicine. Pain was a constant, roaring companion. Life in the ancient world was a visceral experience, marked by the brutality of labor, the violence of conflict, and the ravages of disease. To possess a substance that could turn off the sensation of pain was to possess a fragment of the power of the gods. One must visualize the harvest of this power to understand its gravity. It was a ritual of patience and precision. The Sumerian laborers would move through the fields at dusk. When the heat of the day began to wane, they carried small blades, perhaps made of obsidian or sharpened bone. With the care of a surgeon, they would approach the poppy heads, the gift of the fields. The cut had to be exact, too shallow, and the milk would not flow too deep, and it would bleed into the hollow center of the pod and be lost. It was a delicate laceration, a scoring of the skin. They would leave the wounded plants overnight, under the canopy of the ancient stars, while the city-states of Ur and Uruk slept. The chemistry of the plant went to work. The milky sap would weep from the cuts, slowly congealing, darkening as it dried. By morning, the laborers would return to scrape the sticky, brown gum from the pods. This raw opium, this resinous tear of the poppy, was the concentrated soul of the plant. But what was happening, truly, when this resin entered the human body? To the Sumerians, it was magic. It was a spirit entering the blood. Today, we understand it as a masterful biological coincidence, or perhaps a sinister evolutionary lock and key. The resin contained alkaloids, complex molecules that we would later name morphine and codeine. These molecules, shaped by nature over millions of years, happened to possess a structure almost identical to the signaling chemicals used by the human brain. When a Sumerian priest or a wounded soldier consumed the whole gill asterisk, these molecules drifted through the bloodstream like ships navigating a river. They eventually docked at specific ports within the nervous system receptors designed to regulate pain and emotion. The plant's molecules fit into these receptors with terrifying perfection, like a key sliding into a well-oiled lock. Once turned, the lock opened a door to a different reality. The transmission of pain signals was halted, blocked at the gate. But the plant did more than merely silence pain. It flooded the system with a sensation of profound, enveloping warmth. It was a feeling of being held, of being protected, of being suspended in a womb-like state of safety. The anxieties of the survival-focused mind, the fear of hunger, the fear of predators, the fear of tomorrow dissolved into a golden haze. It was a chemical sanctuary, a place where the harshness of the waking world could not reach. This was the joy of the whole gill asterisk. It was not the frantic, energetic joy of celebration, but the heavy, lidded joy of peace. It was the joy of relief, for the laborer with an aching back, for the woman in the throes of difficult childbirth, for the warrior with a festering wound. This plant was the greatest mercy the earth had ever offered. It is no wonder that the poppy was soon elevated to sacred status. Depicted in art and jewelry, its capsule shape mimicked in the design of jugs and vials that would travel the known world. Yet, even in these earliest days, the duality of the poppy was present. The Greeks, who would later inherit this knowledge from the East, understood that the gods do not give with one hand without taking with the other. The poppy was a gift, but it was a heavy one. The sleep it offered was profound, but it was perilously close to the final sleep. In the ancient world, the dosage was an art, not a science. A little of the resin brought relief and sweet dreams. A little more brought a stupor, a heaviness of the limbs where the body felt like lead and the mind floated like smoke. But too much brought the cessation of breath. The chest would simply stop rising. The heart, lulled into a rhythm too slow to sustain life, would flutter and stop. The sleep indistinguishable from death became, quite literally, death itself. There was also the matter of the spirit's enslavement. The Sumerians noticed that those who partook of the whole Jill too often began to change. The sanctuary became a prison. The body, having tasted the peace of the poppy, would rebel when the drug was withdrawn. The pain would return, amplified 1,000 times, accompanied by a sickness of the gut and a trembling of the hands. The joy plant demanded a tribute. It created a hunger that bread could not satisfy, a thirst that water could not quench. This was the first instance of humanity's struggle with addiction, a biological trap laid in the very chemistry of comfort. And so, the poppy began its journey out of the cradle of civilization, carried along the trade routes that were slowly knitting the world together. It traveled in the saddlebags of merchants, in the holds of reed boats, passed from hand to hand as a commodity of immense value. It moved from Sumer to the rising power of Egypt, where it would find a new home in the lush silt of the Nile Delta. In Egypt, the relationship deepened. The physicians of the pharaohs, men of immense learning who combined magic with observation, saw the poppy as a vital tool in their pharmacopoeia. We see it in the Ebers Papyrus, a medical scroll dating back to 1500 BC. The text suggests the poppy as a remedy for a crying child. A mixture of poppy seeds and fly dung, a likely symbolic or binding agent strained into a drink. It was used to treat headaches, to soothe the asthmatics, to calm the turbulent mind. The Egyptians, with their obsession with the afterlife and the preservation of the body, respected the poppy for its ability to simulate the stillness of death while the subject still breathed. The plant became woven into the mythology of the Mediterranean. As the knowledge spread to Crete and Greece, the poppy became associated with the earth goddesses, the deities of fertility and sleep. We see terracotta statues from Crete, the poppy goddesses, their hands raised in benediction, their hair adorned with gashed poppy capsules. It is a striking image. Divinity crowned with the source of oblivion. It suggests that the ancients understood that the power to give life and the power to take away consciousness were two sides of the same coin. In Greek mythology, the poppy was the flower of Morpheus, the god of dreams, and his father Hypnos, the god of sleep. It was said that at the entrance to the dark cave of Hypnos, in the underworld, poppies bloomed in profusion, casting a drowsiness over all who approached. It was the flower of Demeter, the goddess of the harvest, who, in her grief over the loss of her daughter Persephone to the underworld, ate poppies to dull her sorrow. Here, the myth mirrors the reality. The plant as a mechanism for coping with unbearable grief, a way to numb the sharpness of loss. But let us return to the sensory experience of the ancient user. For history is not just dates and trade routes. It is the accumulated library of human feeling. Imagine a citizen of a Bronze Age city, weary and broken by the toil of building the great ziggurats. He seeks out the healer, the ****. The room is dim, lit by the flicker of an oil lamp. The air smells of burning herbs. The healer hands him a small cup, a mixture of wine and the dissolved tears of the poppy. The liquid is bitter, swirled with the sediment of the earth. He drinks. At first, there is nothing but the taste. Then, slowly, a warmth begins in the pit of the stomach. It spreads outward, reaching the fingertips and the toes. The knot of tension in the shoulders unravels. The throbbing ache in the joints recedes, as if the volume of the world has been turned down. The flickering shadows on the wall seem to slow their dance. The mind detaches from the body. The worries of the harvest, the taxes owed to the temple, the fear of the neighboring army, all of it becomes distant, trivial, belonging to someone else. He is floating in a vast, velvet darkness, a sea of calm. He has entered the realm of the whole Jill asterisk. This seduction was total. It was the first technological victory over the limitations of the human condition. Before the poppy, man was a slave to his nervous system. If he was hurt, he felt pain. If he was sad, he felt grief. The poppy offered a choice. It offered an exit door. It was a tool that allowed humanity to edit their own experience of reality. Yet, as the centuries turned into millennia, the knowledge of the poppy's preparation evolved. The ancients did not distill it. They used it whole. They drank the tea of the pods. They ate the seeds. They swallowed the raw gum. The potency varied with the soil, the rain, and the time of harvest. It was an unpredictable spirit. Sometimes it was a gentle lullaby. Other times it was a hammer blow. The trade in this substance began to shape economies. Small juglets, shaped like inverted poppy capsules, known today as bilbil jugs, have been found scattered across the Levant and Egypt. These were the branding of the ancient world, a visual guarantee of the contents. To see this shape was to know that relief was at hand. It was the first pharmaceutical packaging, a symbol recognized by those who spoke different tongues but shared the universal language of pain. As the Bronze Age collapsed and the Iron Age rose in the clash of empires, the poppy remained a constant. It survived the fall of cities and the burning of libraries. It was too valuable to be forgotten. It was passed down through the oral traditions of healers and the secret recipes of grandmothers. It was whispered about in the marketplaces of Babylon and shouted about in the silence of the sick room. However, the true scientific dismantling of the poppy, the isolation of the demon within the gum, was still thousands of years in the future. For the ancients, it remained a holistic entity. It was a plant of the earth, fed by the waters of the great rivers, ripened by the sun god. Its effects were viewed through a lens of magic and religion, not chemistry. When a man died from too much whole Jill asterisk, it was not respiratory depression. It was the gods calling him home, or a demon stealing his breath. We must also consider the environment in which this plant thrived. The poppy is a hardy survivor. It does not require the pampered soil of a royal garden. It grows in the disturbed earth, on the edges of fields, in the rubble of ruins. It is a weed that offers paradise. This resilience allowed it to spread effortlessly, following the plow and the sword. Wherever humans broke the earth, the poppy was there to offer solace for the backbreaking labor. In this long, slow dawn of the poppy's history, we see the establishment of a pattern that would repeat until the present day. The search for relief, the discovery of a substance, the awe at its power, the widespread use, and then the creeping realization of the cost. The Sumerians called it joy, but they also knew it was a tether, The Egyptians used it for healing, but they knew it belonged to the realm of the dead. The milk of paradise was never just milk, it was a mirror. It reflected the frailty of the human body and the desperation of the human mind to escape its own confines. As we look back at those ancient clay tablets, we are not just looking at a receipt for a drug. We are looking at the first chapter of a love affair that would become abusive, a dependency that would topple empires and start wars in the distant future. But in the beginning, under the Neolithic sun, it was innocent. It was just a flower that bled white milk, a flower that promised that, for a little while, the burden of being human could be set down. The wind would blow through the fields between the Tigris and Euphrates, rustling the dry pods, a sound like 1,000 tiny rattles shaking in the heat. Inside those pods waited the dreams of kings and the oblivion of beggars, patient and potent, waiting for the knife to score the skin and release the genie from the bottle. This was the beginning. The door had been opened, the biological key had turned, and as the sun set over the ziggurats of Ur, casting long purple shadows across the desert, the people of the river slept the deep, dreamless sleep of the poppy, unaware that they had invited a guest that would never leave. The seduction was complete, and the long, winding road of opium had only just begun. As the epochs shifted, the knowledge of the poppy did not remain static. It migrated. It changed hands from the Sumerians to the Assyrians, those masters of war who understood the value of pain and its cessation. In the bas-reliefs of the Assyrian palaces, amidst the depictions of lion hunts and chariot battles, the botanical motifs persist. The plant traveled west, crossing the wine-dark sea to the islands of the Aegean. Here, in the world of the Greeks, the intellectual curiosity of the philosophers met the mystical traditions of the East. The poppy was subjected to a new kind of scrutiny, not just as a gift of the gods, but as a subject of natural inquiry. Hippocrates, the father of medicine, acknowledged its utility. He spoke of meconium, the juice of the poppy, advising its use for feminine ailments and the flux of the bowels. But notice the shift in tone. The Sumerian joy was slowly being replaced by the clinical utility. The magic was beginning to wear a coat of rationality. Yet, the danger remained. To the Greeks, the poppy was a symbol of the fine line between sleep and death. Hypnos and Thanatos' death were brothers. After all, to embrace one was to brush against the shoulder of the other. In the bustling marketplaces of Alexandria, the melting pot of the ancient world, the opium trade flourished. Here, traders from India met merchants from Rome. The brown resin was weighed in brass scales, exchanged for silver and gold. It was becoming a currency, a store of value as reliable as grain or oil. It was a commodity of comfort in a world that was often uncomfortable. The Romans, with their engineering minds and their sprawling empire, consumed it voraciously. Galen, the personal physician to the Emperor Marcus Aurelius, wrote extensively of the drug. He created theriac, a complex concoction of dozens of ingredients with opium as the crowning jewel. It was a panacea, a cure-all. The emperor himself was known to take a daily dose, a nugget of opium to steady the nerves of the man who ruled the world. We can picture the emperor in his tent on the Germanic frontier, the cold wind howling outside, the weight of the empire on his shoulders. Finding a moment of quietude in the dark resin was the wisdom of his asterisk meditations, asterisk aided by the detachment the poppy provided. It is a question the ghosts of history do not answer. But as Rome fell and the lights of Europe dimmed, the knowledge of the poppy was preserved in the East. The Arab traders, the keepers of the flame of science during the dark ages of the West, held the poppy in high esteem in the Islamic Golden Age. Where alcohol was forbidden, hashish and opium occupied a complex cultural space. They were the wines of the mind that did not intoxicate in the same brawling, stumbling manner as the grape. The great physician Avicenna, the prince of physicians, whose asterisk can of medicine asterisk would guide doctors for centuries, praised opium as the most powerful of stupefiants. But he, too, sounded the warning note. He died, it is said, of an overdose, or perhaps from the exhaustion of a life lived with too much intensity. Aided and abetted by the drug, his death was a metaphor for the substance itself, brilliance and destruction entwined. In these middle centuries, the poppy began to move further east, traveling the Silk Road, crossing the high passes of the Himalayas, entering the vastness of China. There, it would eventually find its most tragic and transformative chapter. But that is a story for a later time. For now, in these ancient and medieval eras, the poppy remained largely a medicine, a mysterious and potent ally against pain. It was a slow burn. For thousands of years, the relationship was stable. The milk of paradise was a known quantity. It was dangerous, yes, but manageable. It was a part of the rhythm of life and death, just another plant in the garden of the world. But underneath this stability, the potential for catastrophe was always waiting. The chemistry of the plant had not changed. The biology of the human had not changed. All that was needed was a change in the method of delivery, a change in the concentration, a change in the intent. The story of the poppy is the story of humanity's desire to alter its own consciousness. It is a story written in the language of receptors and neurons, but told in the language of dreams and nightmares. From the first Sumerian farmer who scraped the weeping pod to the Roman emperor seeking solace, the thread is unbroken. We stand today at the far end of this history, looking back at that Neolithic sunrise. We can see the trajectory clearly now. We can see how the joy plant became the opium of the people, and later, the scourge of the modern city. But in those early days, it was simply a miracle, a way to stop the screaming, a way to sleep, a way to touch the void and return, safe, to the morning light. The poppy fields of the ancient world are gone now, turned to dust or paved over by the march of time. But the legacy of that first encounter remains. It is in our medicine cabinets, in our hospitals, and in the shadowed alleys of our cities. The milk of paradise is still with us, flowing through the veins of civilization, a blessing and a curse that we have never quite learned how to handle. As the sun finally sets on this chapter of the deep past, we leave the Sumerians to their dreams, the clay tablets dry in the sun, preserving the secret of the asterisk Hull-Jill asterisk. The rivers flow on, indifferent to the dramas of the humans on their banks, and the flower, the beautiful, deadly, merciful flower, folds its petals against the coming night, waiting for the next hand to reach out and claim its dark reward. The silence returns to the valley. But it is a different silence, now a silence pregnant with the knowledge of a power that can unmake the world. Time is a river, much like the Nile itself, a relentless, flowing force that carries the silt of history from one age to the next. As we drift away from the cradle of Mesopotamia, leaving behind the clay tablets of Sumer and the ziggurats of Ur, we follow the currents of civilization westward. We cross the burning expanse of the Sinai, a bridge of sand and wind, until we arrive at a land defined by a singular, miraculous contrast. The golden desert and the black earth. This is Kemet, the black land. This is Egypt. Here, under the unblinking gaze of a sun that burned with the intensity of a god, the relationship between humanity and the poppy deepened, matured, and took on a sacred complexity. If Sumer was the childhood of opium, a time of discovery and raw wonder, Egypt was its adolescence, a time of ritual, codified knowledge, and the integration of the drug into the very machinery of empire. The knowledge of the joy plant did not perish in the desert. It thrived, carried in the saddlebags of Bedouin traders and the holds of cedar ships, arriving in a kingdom where the preservation of life and the preparation for death were the twin obsessions of the culture. Imagine the landscape. It is a world of blinding light and sharp shadows. The Nile cuts through the desert like a vein of life, its banks lush with papyrus reeds, date palms, and fields of emmer wheat. The air is thick with the smell of river mud, baking bread, and the faint, metallic tang of copper. In this fertile strip, watered by the annual inundation, the poppy found a second home. It rooted itself in the rich, alluvial soil, drinking the waters that had traveled all the way from the mountains of the moon. But here, the flower was not just a wild weed of the fields. It was becoming a cultivated crop, a tool of the state, and a gift of the divine. The Egyptians, with their profound penchant for mythology, did not view the world as a collection of random biological accidents. To them, every stone, every beetle, and every flower was a manifestation of the divine will. The poppy was no different. They looked at its nodding head, heavy with the resinous gum, and they saw a connection to the heavens. In the poetic theology of the Nile, the poppy was born from the anguish of the gods. The legend tells us of Ra, the great sun god, the creator of all things. Ra was the bringer of light, sailing his solar bark across the sky each day, battling the serpent of chaos, Apophis. But Ra was not immune to sorrow. It was said that in a moment of profound grief, perhaps weeping for the corruption of humanity or the burden of his eternal vigilance, the god let tears fall from his burning eyes. These tears, divine and potent, fell from the heavens and struck the earth. Where they landed, they did not water the ground with rain. They birthed a flower, the poppy. This myth is a masterstroke of symbolic intuition. The Egyptians understood, perhaps better than we do, the dual nature of the substance. Tears are the physical manifestation of pain and sorrow. To say the poppy grew from tears is to acknowledge that it is rooted in suffering. It is a plant born of grief, designed to address grief. It is the tears of Re given physical form, a divine substance sent to earth to dry the tears of mortals. It was a bridge between the agony of the human condition and the serene detachment of the gods. In the bustling cities of Thebes, Memphis, and Heliopolis, the medical profession was rising to a level of sophistication the world had never seen. The Egyptian physician, the *Sun*, was a man of immense learning, often a priest attached to a temple, walking the line between magic and science. These men did not distinguish between the spiritual and the physical. A headache was as likely to be caused by a demon as by the heat. To treat the body, one had to treat the soul, and in their pharmacopoeia, amidst the honey, the acacia, and the myrrh, the poppy held a place of reverence. We have the physical evidence of this reverence. In the dry silence of the desert tombs, archaeologists have found small juglets. Distinct in their shape, they are known as bilbal jugs, imported from Cyprus and the Levant. If you hold one in your hand, you will notice a striking detail. The jug is shaped like an inverted poppy capsule. The base is the round, swollen pod. The neck is the stalk, and the rim often flares like the crown of the stigma. This was not an aesthetic accident. This was ancient branding. Just as a modern bottle of bleach is instantly creating a warning in the mind, this shape communicated a promise. It said, "Inside this vessel lies relief. Inside lies sleep. Let us transport ourselves into the world where these vessels were used. Let us construct a scene from the height of the new kingdom, perhaps during the reign of Amenhotep I, a time of opulence and peace." We find ourselves in the district of the workers, in the shadow of the great limestone monuments that are slowly rising to pierce the sky. The heat is a physical weight, pressing down on the rooftops. In a small, mud brick house, the air is still and stifling. A man lies on a woven mat, his leg crushed days ago by a shifting block of stone at the quarry. The pain is a living thing, a devouring beast that has robbed him of sleep, of appetite, of reason. His skin is gray, beaded with the sweat of agony. His family watches in helpless silence. The only sound, the buzzing of flies and the shallow, ragged breathing of the injured man. Enter the physician. He is a figure of calm in the chaos of the sick room. His head shaved clean, his linen robe white and starch stiff. He carries a wooden chest, the tools of his trade. He does not rush. He examines the wound, murmuring incantations to drive away the evil spirits that have taken residence in the crushed bone. But he knows that prayers alone will not silence the screaming nerves. He reaches into his chest and withdraws a small alabaster jar, sealed with wax. He begins the preparation. This is not merely a medical procedure. It is a ritual. He takes a small amount of the dark, sticky resin, the sheepen asterisk, as the Egyptians called the poppy plant. He places it into a mortar. To this, he adds ingredients that might sound bizarre to the modern ear, but which held deep significance and practical utility. The texts speak of fly excrement. Some scholars argue this is a mistranslation, a poetic name for the seeds of a different plant, perhaps basil or henbane, resembling small dark specks. Others suggest it was literal, a sympathetic magic component, or perhaps even the fly-specked husk of the poppy itself. He mixes the resin with beer, the staple drink of the people. A thick, nutritious, slightly sour liquid that acts as the solvent. He might add a drop of wine to sweeten the bitterness, or honey to coat the throat. The pestle grinds against the mortar, a rhythmic scraping sound that signals the beginning of mercy. The mixture is strained, the liquid turning a murky, earth-toned brown. It does not look like a miracle. It looks like mud. But the physician knows the power hidden within the suspension. He lifts the head of the suffering man. The family leans in, holding their breath. The cup is pressed to cracked lips. Drink. The physician commands, invoking the name of Ra. Invoking the peace of the night sky, the man swallows. The taste is acrid, bitter, revolting, a taste that the body naturally wants to reject. But he forces it down. Now, we must slow down the narrative to the pace of the heartbeat. We must visualize the journey of the molecule. For the next 20 minutes, nothing happens. The pain continues its monotonous, screaming monologue. The family waits. The physician waits, watching the eyes of the patient. Then, the chemistry begins to take hold. Deep within the body, the alkaloids of the poppy are entering the bloodstream. They are carried by the pulse, circulating through the heart, moving towards the brain. They cross the blood-brain barrier, that fortress designed to protect the mind from the toxins of the world. But these molecules are not recognized as enemies. They are recognized as keys. They find the opioid receptors, tiny, protein-based locks scattered across the surface of the neurons. They slide in. They click. To the man on the mat, the sensation is not scientific. It is spiritual. It begins as a loosening of the chest. The tight bands of anxiety that have constricted his breathing for days start to slacken. The air seems to flow more easily into his lungs. Then, a warmth blooms in the stomach, radiating outward like a second sun rising within the body. It moves to the fingertips, to the toes, washing away the cold clamor of shock. And then, the miracle. The pain, which has been a towering, jagged mountain in the center of his consciousness, begins to erode. It does not necessarily vanish, but it moves away. It recedes into the distance. As if viewed through the wrong end of a telescope, it becomes impersonal. There is pain. The mind acknowledges, but it is not my pain. It is over there. It does not matter. The room softens. The harsh edges of the mud bricks. The glare of the sunlight cutting through the doorway. The worried faces of his children, everything takes on a soft, golden edge. A heaviness settles over his limbs. But it is a pleasant heaviness. The feeling of sinking into a deep, feather bed after a week of toil. His eyelids flutter and close. The lines of agony on his forehead smooth out, erased by the invisible hand of the drug. His breathing slows, becoming deep and rhythmic. He is no longer in the room. He is floating on the cool waters of the Nile, drifting towards a horizon of infinite peace. The physician watches the transformation. He sees the glassy stillness come over the eyes before they close. He feels the pulse slow down. He nods. The demon has been banished. The sheep has done its work. To the family, it is magic. The priest has called upon the power of the gods to silence the suffering. And in a way, he has. But the Egyptians did not only use this power for the dying or the maimed. The poppy woven its way into the fabric of daily life. We must consider the Ebers Papyrus *, that great scroll of medical knowledge dating back to 1550 BC. Unfurled, it reveals over 700 remedies, and the poppy appears repeatedly. It was a household ally. Think of the Egyptian mother. The nights in the ancient world were dark and silent, amplifying the sound of a crying child, a teething baby, a colicky infant. These were sources of exhaustion and stress then as they are now. But the Egyptian mother had a remedy that her modern counterpart does not. She had the remedy to prevent the excessive crying of children. She would take a small clay vessel, perhaps shaped like a juglet, and pour a drop of the poppy juice, mixed perhaps with milk or honey. She would rub it on the child as gums or let them swallow a tiny draught. The effect was immediate. The crying ceased. The child went limp, falling into a deep, unnatural slumber. The house returned to silence. It was efficient. It was effective. It was dangerous. We can only guess at the infant mortality rates that might have been influenced by this practice. How many children, given a dose slightly too strong, simply never woke up? In the ancient mind, this would not be seen as a chemical overdose. It would be the will of the gods. The child was too beautiful for this world. The gods took him back. The line between the sleep of the poppy and the sleep of death was always thin, a gossamer veil that fluttered in the breeze. This proximity to death gave the poppy a dark glamour. The Egyptians were a culture obsessed with the afterlife. With the journey of the ***, they spent their lives preparing for the moment the heart would stop, the state induced by opium, the slow breath, the immobility, the vivid, lucid dreams was seen as a rehearsal for death. It was a way to peek behind the curtain. In the trance of the poppy, the user might see visions of the field of reeds, the Egyptian paradise. They might converse with the spirits of ancestors. The hallucinations brought on by high doses were interpreted as divine messages. The poppy was a key not just to pain relief, but to the hidden realms of the cosmos. It dissolved the ego, the I, and allowed the soul to merge with the infinite, if only for a few hours. Yet, even in this golden age, the shadow of dependency began to lengthen. The text of the chapter speaks of a quiet specter waiting in the dark corners of history. This is the paradox of the poppy. It gives, but it demands a price. The Egyptian physicians, wise as they were, began to notice that the patient who took the sheepin for a broken leg would sometimes return after the bone had knit. They would complain of phantom pains, of a sickness in the gut, of a trembling in the hands. They would ask for the tears of Ra not because they were in agony, but because they could not face the day without them. The body, in its infinite biological wisdom, adjusts to the presence of the drug. It downregulates its own natural pain-killing systems. When the opium is removed, the body is left defenseless, raw, and shivering. The cure becomes the necessity. In the ancient courts of Thebes, there must have been courtiers, scribes, perhaps even pharaohs, who lived in a perpetual haze, their eyes permanently pinned, their wills eroded by the soft, brown gum. We can imagine a high-ranking scribe, a man of letters and responsibility. He begins taking the drug for a toothache. The tooth is pulled, the gum heals, but he continues. He finds that the drug makes the tedious hours of inventorying grain sacks pass like a dream. It makes the harsh words of his superior feel distant and unimportant. But soon, he needs it to rise in the morning. He needs it to eat. He needs it to stop the shaking. He has become a servant of the flower. The Egyptians did not have a word for addiction in the modern sense. They likely viewed it as a weakness of spirit or a possession, but the phenomenon was there, woven into the human reaction to the molecule. The seducer that the Sumerians discovered had now moved into the palace. It had put on kohl eyeliner and linen robes. It had become sophisticated. The trade routes carried this sophistication across the Mediterranean. The **Bilbil** jugs found in tombs from the Nile to the Mycenaean citadels of Greece tell a story of a vibrant, lucrative commerce. Opium was the aspirin of the Bronze Age, but it was also the alcohol, the Valium, and the morphine. It was the universal salve. The economy of the ancient Mediterranean was partly lubricated by this resin. To trade in opium was to trade in mercy, and mercy was a commodity that was always in high demand. As the centuries drifted like sand, the new kingdom eventually collapsed. The great temples fell into disrepair. The sands encroached on the fertile fields. But the poppy remained. It survived the invasions of the Persians, the Greeks, the Romans. It was too valuable to be lost. The recipe for **sheep and * might have changed. The incantations might have been translated into Greek or Latin, but the core truth remained. The resin of the poppy could turn off the world. Let us pause and look at the specific imagery of the tears of Ra one last time. The sun god, the source of all life. Weeping, it suggests a cosmic compassion. It suggests that the universe knows that life is hard. The heat of the sun is relentless. It burns the skin, it dries the earth, it maddens the mind. But from that same source comes the relief. The poison and the antidote are born of the same father. This duality is the heartbeat of the poppy story. It is the pharmakon, the Greek word that would later emerge, meaning both remedy and poison. In Egypt, we see the pharmakon in its purest ancient form. It was the holy medicine of the temple, and it was the quiet killer in the crib. It was the bringer of sweet dreams, and the creator of a waking nightmare of need. In the cool, stone halls of the temples, as the incense burned low and the oil lamps flickered, the priests guarded this knowledge. They understood that they were handling a fire that did not burn the skin, but could consume the will. They administered it with gravity, with ritual, with a respect that bordered on fear. They knew that to uncork the bilbil jug was to invite a power into the room that was older than the pyramids and stronger than stone. As we leave the banks of the Nile, we carry this image with us, a civilization of immense power and grandeur, building monuments to eternity, yet finding its greatest comfort in the fragile, fleeting chemistry of a flower. The stone monuments were built to defy death, to ensure that the name of the pharaoh would last forever. But the poppy offered something different. It did not defy death. It embraced it. It offered a temporary eternity, a little slice of oblivion to hold in the mouth. The wind shifts now, blowing from the north, across the great green sea. The story of the poppy is about to jump the water. It is leaving the world of god kings and animal-headed deities. It is moving towards the land of philosophers, logicians, and tragedians. It is moving to Greece. There, the tears of Ra will be analyzed, categorized, and named. The magic will begin to fade, replaced by the cold light of inquiry. But the feeling, the warmth, the stillness, the silence will remain exactly the same. For the biology of the human being does not change with the flags of empires. The receptors in the brain of a Theban priest in 1300 BC are identical to the receptors in the brain of a Victorian poet or a modern patient. We are all bound by the same chemical laws, vulnerable to the same seductions. And so, the poppy waits. It grows on the edges of the desert, its petals fluttering in the hot breeze, its capsule swelling with the milky promise of paradise. It watches the dynasties rise and fall. It watches the stone crumble. It knows that as long as there is pain, it will be needed. It is the patient witness, the dangerous friend, the tears of the sun falling forever into the open wounds of the world. The shadow lengthens. The sun of Egypt sets in a blaze of ochre and violet. The night comes, and with it, the need for sleep. And in the darkness, the resin is scraped, the potion is mixed, and the long, slow history of the poppy flows on, a dark river moving silently beneath the surface of the world.